Sure. Okay. All right. I'd like to welcome all participants to Coffee with C.A.R.P. Upon joining now, you have been placed on mute. However, during the question period, you can either enter a question in your own chat box at the bottom of your screen, or if you prefer to raise your virtual hand, which is like that, you can raise your virtual hand. We can unmute you to ask your own question. Please note that this session is being recorded so listeners can enjoy it later if they're not able to attend today. My name is Doreen Sitter, and I will be your host today. This is our first Coffee with C.A.R.P program, and it is a 1-hour online Zoom program where people can join bi-monthly every second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. to chat about topics of interest. These topics will range from positive aging, everyday life interests, good news, money matters, basically any topic our inquiring minds may want to talk about. First, I would like to introduce our chapter's president, Kathleen Spat, who will give you a brief overview of what the new changes to our group are and the vision we have for C.A.R.P Saskatchewan. Kathleen?
Hi, thank you, Doreen. I'm happy to represent our provincial chapter, which is part of Canada's largest advocacy organization for older adults. We presently have over 325,000 members across the country, so we're a formidable group. As a nonprofit, nonpartisan association, we advocate to uphold the rights and improve the lives of Canadians as we age. We're formerly known as C.A.R.P Regina chapter, and we are now C.A.R.P Saskatchewan. So we're reaching out to all corners of the province. More than a simple name change, though, this means we will be expanding our offerings to include local, regional, and provincial chapter representation. Representation from around the province means we will represent a more diversified voice, your voice. This will give us a greater capacity to press forward with our C.A.R.P Saskatchewan's advocacy priorities, which are: we want creation of an independent seniors advocate in our province. We want fully funded high-dose flu, pneumonia, and shingles vaccines. And we want reform in long-term care and home care. So those are our priorities. For more information about C.A.R.P and all the benefits of being a member, please feel free to go to carp.ca. So welcome to our first Coffee with C.A.R.P. Doreen?
Okay, well, thank you, Kathleen. And now on with our programming. Our topic today is spring planting, do's and don'ts. And we are very pleased to have a guest with us, Sheila Bonneteau. Besides holding her Master Gardener accreditation, Sheila studied greenhouse crop production and is currently the proud owner of Mannequin Gardening Solutions in Regina. Sheila assists clients with landscape designs, gardening issues, personal gardening coaching, and design. Sheila's mantra is gardening should never be disappointing when we stick to the fundamentals, trust the science, and protect the environment. We are so pleased that you could join us today. Welcome, Sheila.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here on the groundbreaking first episode of Coffee with C.A.R.P. This is wonderful. This is great, and lots of faces. So we're going to talk today. I'm going to talk for about 5-10 minutes on the do's and don'ts of spring planting and the maintenance of this, what we're working on this time of year. Like we were just speaking before, it's already almost the middle of May, and although we have some chilly nights to come, there are things we can be doing in our yards and our gardens, from containers right through. So first and foremost, always have a plan. There's plenty of time. I'm warning clients right now, those that I coach and speak to on a daily basis. There's plenty of time to get into the garden centers. Don't rush. I know this year with COVID is a little different. Plants and garden bedding plants and seeds are the new toilet paper from last year. People are rushing out, spending way more than has ever been spent before. And the seed houses sold out back in January. It's been chaos, but there's still plenty of cold nights. So unless you're willing to drag all these bedding plants in and out and in and out, it's too early. And there's more chance of them. What I would sooner see is them to fail in the greenhouse, not on your patio, where now you're turning around and going out and buying new plants again. When I worked in the greenhouse industry, we saw everybody on Mother's Day and they bought all their bedding plants, and then we saw them again the May long weekend when they bought them all again. So let's avoid that. What I want you to do right now is take this time to plan. Take this time to plan your containers. Take this time to plan your perennial beds. Maybe they need sprucing up. Maybe you need a new shrub you want to investigate. Things like that. Hopefully we took some pictures last fall of the yard. So now we can implement those changes now. So where do we start? Well, we want to split and divide our perennial to show some spring growth. And one side of the yard can give you a completely different picture than the other side of the yard. So we have to be patient and be mindful of that. Just because the hosters aren't up on the north side yet doesn't mean they're not coming. You know, like I said, it's still a bit early. So as we warm up though, we'll start to see some sign of life. That's when we want to take action. If you're going to feed your soils, right now is the time to do it. We generally don't amend soils within 3 weeks of planting out for a number of different reasons. But if you want to put a top dressing of compost on the beds, by all means, this week would be the time to do it. Work it in a little bit, a couple of inches if you can with a garden claw, and you're set to go by the time we plant out after the May long weekend. Now is also the time, I guess, to focus on our hardscapes. What needs repairing? What needs general maintenance or installation? Now is the time to get your quote for that new vinyl fence you've been thinking about. All of that needs to be happening now. We need to clean our containers, our annual container pots out now. We need to sharpen the tools, sharpen the lawnmower blades, get everything in working condition now. What we don't want to do is clean our beds too early. There's a lot of beneficial insects that laid their eggs last fall in the leaf mulch that came down from the trees. And we want to make sure we give them the best shot at hatching and going on their way before we get in there. Again, we don't want to plant out anything too early. So we want our soil temperatures to be at least 15 degrees or higher before we start mucking around. Now, if you're going to do any work to the lawn this year, hold off and make sure it's not too wet before you start to step onto the lawns. We're in a drought situation again. I think this is the third year we can safely say we haven't had enough spring moisture. But if you have a soggier area, don't be tracking on those spots. We cause compaction, which inhibits root growth, things like that. Anytime we enter the soil, it has to be good and dry before we do so, or you'll cause compaction issues. Now is the time, of course, we want to be pruning off any winter kill on our shrubs, on our trees, anything that looks like black knot, get that off and dispose of it. And of course, we want to prune anything that blooms on new wood right now. The series of hydrangeas, the panicles that we grow in Saskatchewan, bloom on new wood. We want to be pruning our hydrangeas. We want to be pruning our potentilias right now. They bloom on new wood. So get off the old, in with the new, and focus on things like that. Of course, when it comes to planning our containers, we never want to go to the greenhouse without some kind of a list. We don't want to impulse purchase our annuals. They're far too expensive. And if we don't really have a plan and we don't know the actual growth habits and things like that, we can make mistakes. And you're spending, when one petunia can cost up to $6 a piece, we want to get this right. So, we have to get online, and, Dutch Growers has a great plant finder database if you want to search particular plants in particular. You can go to their website, look for a little tab that says Plant Finder, investigate any of the plants that we know grow here in Regina in Zone 3. That's shrubs, trees, annuals, perennials. They have it all on there. Do your homework first and try to avoid that impulse shopping. And that's big right this time of year. We're all excited to get out there. We've had a long winter, but we need to be mindful and do it smart as possible for our wallets, as well as the success of these things. And some combinations are better than others. So, you can look online for inspiration and go that way. And of course, anytime you have a question, you can always contact me. I'll post my email in the chat. And that's what I do. I answer gardening questions 24/7, 365 days a year. It's amazing. Even in the dead of winter, we're talking gardening. So, keep these things in mind and you will have a successful season. Plan if you're going to be at the lake versus at home, more so than this summer, things like that. We need to be mindful of the plan and carrying these containers, especially right through into fall. And of course, it's still early, but it's not too late to talk about a frost plan either. So last year, many of us suffered bud failure on our trees and shrubs because we had a late kill frost in May. And that's the kind of thing we need to prep for this, have a plan. How am I going to deal with insects this year? Put together your integrated pest management. Big word for a simple term. It just means have a plan in place now. Now's the time to do all the thinking on how the season is going to go so that we're not caught off guard. We want to take how we garden from a reactive into a proactive approach. And when you can do that, you will see improvements throughout your landscapes. So that was fast and furious, but that's the gist of the spring do and don'ts.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sheila. Yeah. There's so many questions here that are coming fast and furious for you. So I will start to answer a few, ask a few of them. The first one is about spring bulbs. The instructions say to plant 6 inches, but having had many fail, a local gardener suggested going only 2 inches as they rot before they can defrost and start growing in our climate. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm assuming you're talking about the hardy bulbs that you planted last fall or that come back after every winter.
What they say spring bulbs. The spring bulbs. So I imagine, yes, they were talking,
the spring bloomers. So your best bet always is, so the bulb itself has enough life to send the shoot to the surface on a specific depth only. If you're having trouble with rotting, then we need to amend the soil first. It's probably holding too much water. So some organic matter in there wouldn't hurt. Improve the drainage, improve the life of the soil itself. And that should take care of some problems. If you're planting too deep, that bulb only has enough life to send that shoot to the surface. It knows exactly how far it should be away for it to thrive. If we're going too deep, you have to always follow the instructions on the package. Shallower, okay, that's fine to an extent though, because that bulb could freeze out over winter. So I wouldn't give the advice to plant outside of the appropriate planting depths. Now, is something actually burrowing through the bulb? And voles are notorious. Squirrels and gophers will burrow down or the squirrels will just dig them right up. But gophers will burrow down and chew through the bulb on their way and off they go. But voles especially, we need to look at that. Maybe some investigation. It's time to dig the bed up and take a really good look at what's happening.
Okay.
And outside of that, always follow the directions and always ensure you're buying top quality bulbs, not the big box store bulbs. You need to go to the growers. You need to go to the greenhouses and spend a little more money.
All right,
Yeah.
I have there. Noreen, you have a question?
Yeah, when you do start planting, are there certain plants that you can start slightly earlier than others? And which would those be?
As far as annuals, like flowering plants, Maureen,
Sorry,
or vegetables, or are we talking?
just a second. I have to unmute her again. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't seem to unmute Noreen again. My
I'll
apologies.
do it. Vegetables, you guys. Vegetables.
Oh,
Sorry.
vegetables. Okay.
Potatoes,
So
onions, all those things.
okay, so onions, your cool season crops can go in earlier. Your broccolis, cabbages, cauliflowers, anything warm season, the nightshade families, the tomatoes, the squash, all those, they go in later. I don't want to see a tomato in a yard in the ground before June 1st. We plant these hot season crops too early, and then they go into a shock state. And now they're stunted for minimum 2 weeks. What you want to do is the hot season, the peppers, the tomatoes, things like that. Hold off. Your cooler season crops, your potatoes, once the soil's dry enough to work and warmed at least to about 15 degrees, then you're safe to plant any cool seasons. But peas can go in earlier, broccolis, cabbages, that kind of thing. I can send a list out to anyone that would like it.
Okay, that would be great. We got some other questions here. What is the best way to kill lily beetles before the lilies grow?
The only treatment, and you're not going to like this answer, is hand picking the beetle itself off the lilies, or looking for the eggs on the underside of the leaves.
Okay.
That's the only cure, unfortunately. And it's a big job.
Yeah. I think you may be
Regina, touch wood.
Yes.
Doesn't have them yet, touch wood, but Saskatoon's been devastated by it.
Yeah. Okay. I think you answered this a bit, but just to reconfirm, is it too early to fertilize our flower beds now?
We generally in Saskatchewan do not fertilize our perennials. We generally never fertilize our tree and shrubs unless we identify a reason to do so. By fertilizing your perennial beds, you're going to create weak and wimpy perennials. They get lazy, and then heading into winter, in the fall, they don't have the capacity to survive. So we in Saskatchewan have high clay, which equals high nutrients. There's generally very little reason to ever fertilize your perennial beds. Your annuals in your containers are another story. You want to fertilize, about 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after planting, every 10 days.
Okay,
for sure. Get the maximum benefit.
Yeah. One person was asking about, should I repot all my hanging baskets in a bigger pot?
I'm assuming you've bought, I got a beautiful petunia basket this year for Mother's Day. And I mean, you could, but you may just do more harm than good. They're growing perfectly fine. They're all neighbors. They've all been planted at the same time. So there's no competition happening. Unless you think that the medium they're in is not great. Lots of times it has too much peat moss in it, and it's very light and has very little water holding capacity. If you think that's the situation, then by all means, but be very careful of those root systems. You could do more harm than good.
Good. We have one question here that they were asking, could you make some suggestion on good companion plants for pots by the house on a hot deck that need water once a day so they won't die? Let's see, by the house on a hot deck, water once a day and won't die in August heat. So I'm not quite sure what that is overall is meaning, but I think they're asking if you could please give some recommendations for plants that would survive well on a hot deck.
Full sun. We always go back to the ornamental grasses are perfect for hot areas. They take drought. Geraniums will take a fair bit of drought. I can send a list out of drought tolerant annuals.
Oh, okay.
But yes, by all means, but more so, let's look at, as long as the annual itself can take full sun, then this comes down to watering. So, or wind, right? If it's a very windy spot, that can be very detrimental to our annuals as well. But when you water your pots, I want you to water until it drains out the bottom holes. Lots of times we're not adding enough water. So we put the hose to it. We never touch the foliage if we can help it with water. We put it at the base of the plants and we water until water drains right through and out the bottom. That way we know we've saturated the entire container. Now you're going to water more at one time, but you're likely going to do it less often. So instead of every day, you might be able to skip to every other day. In the heat of August, when we're 35 above and plus, every day, yes, obviously. But we're not watering our containers enough. Reach down. Don't take the surface either as gospel. Dig down an inch or two and see what's going on underneath that surface. And then it'll give you a better picture. But we tend to underwater our pots and overwater our gardens.
Okay. That kind of addresses the next question that somebody had, was how often should you water your plants? And there really isn't a standard answer to that. It depends on the situation, is what I'm hearing, Sheila.
Yeah, and it depends even right down to the kind of pot you're using, from terracotta versus a glazed versus a plastic versus wooden whiskey barrels. To it all just depends on. And wind, number one, sun and wind always. Or if you're in a high sun, high wind area, you're going to be watering lots.
Okay. Noreen, you had a question here. I think we'll just unmute, if you can unmute yourself again. You had here, which plants can you start within your garden?
We already got that one answered, but I put in a different question, and that is, do you at all add fertilizer to your potting soil before you plant?
I personally do not, but you can add a slow release fertilizer to the soil at planting time. I use Miracle-Gro potting soil. I never stray from that. I've done the trials, I've done the tests for over a decade. Miracle-Gro is your best potting soil. Now, let's go back to filling the containers themselves. If you don't, if you watch for it to go on sale, the big yellow bags are just as cheap as anything else on sale. And you have enough fertilizer already in there to give those plants a head start for about 30 days. Now, after that, even the Miracle-Gro potting soil will require the odd application of fertilizer. Now, if you're going to go a different route with a cheaper potting soil, then by all means, follow the instructions on the, they're usually little beads. You add them in, mix them around. But you'll have to be mindful of how much you're adding, follow the directions on that, specific fertilizer. But again, then, when it's a general maintenance now. Our seasons are so short here that we have to give these plants the best growth situation and environment possible. And fertilizing our annuals is a must if you want results. Yeah,
what is
sure.
it about the Miracle-Gro soil that makes it the best? Is it the combination of the peat moss, the compost, whatever? What is
and
it
they
about
add
it?
in, they've already added in the fertilizers for the jump start. Okay. So you've got about 30 days worth of nutrients in there readily available already. Okay. When you use the addition of the beads, like what you suggested, it takes time for those to break down and become available. Miracle-Gro gives you that right off the bat. Yeah.
Well, the next question is one after my own heart, about planting plants that would keep mosquitoes away? Does it even work? And if it does, what are those plants? Because I will go buy a bushel of them.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna like this answer. No and no and no. There's nothing that deters them. It's marketing. It's, we've got a series of marigolds that smell like lemongrass if you crush the leaves, or it'll smell like citronella. But the point is, you have to crush the leaves to release the essential oil. Well, we're destroying our pots in trying to do so. I haven't come across anything. There's lots of wives' tales out there, and people generally believe, oh, that worked. Maybe the population of mosquito was down that year versus, when the mosquitoes want to find you, they're going to find you, unfortunately.
So someone was
yeah.
asking here, what's the best time to transplant Asiatic, I think, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right, Asiatic lilies?
To transplant them?
Yeah.
As soon as you see any sign of life, you go ahead and start dividing and splitting. Yeah.
Okay, good.
We're almost, in my yard in particular, some of my hostas are 2 inches high, some aren't even up yet. So, just be mindful of the space. But yeah, right now we do all our splitting.
Okay, good. Diane was saying that she rototills her compost, etc., about a week before she plants. Why the 3 weeks?
Okay, so when we're amending soil, there's microbes in the soil that break down organic matter and provide the nutrients, the nitrogen and the macronutrients coming out of the organic matter. If we just add organic matter a week before, those microbes rush to the surface where the fresh compost has been laid, or the depth of it. And where they should be is down in the root zones where we want them. But they rise up and they're in the wrong area. And what it can do is actually cause some nutrient deficiencies. It won't be a long-term deficiency, but it could lock things up for a few weeks. So we try to amend the soil if you're going to do spring amendments. And generally, I don't ever recommend spring amending. I always recommend fall amending, so that those microbes can do their job all winter long under the snow. And by the time we get in there in the spring, the job is done. But if you have to amend in the spring, you want to give it about 3 weeks in case those microbes are in the wrong areas where we don't want them. We want them down in the root zone, not at the surface. So that's why we do that. I generally never recommend spring amendments. If you can help it, fall is optimal. And that goes for manure, compost, leaf mulch, leaf mold, and all of that. So
excellent. One of our C.A.R.P members here, Kathy, says she has 5 horses, and she lets the manure rot for 2 years, then spread it around her trees, lilacs, etc., as a mulch. Does that count as fertilizing? And isn't it a good idea? She's on an acreage old farmland that hasn't had much done to it for the last 100 years.
oh, wow. I have to come out and see your place, Kathy. Yes, by all means. That's called top dressing, as opposed to a mulch. It would be considered a top dressing. And again, I would always recommend doing that in the fall. In case the manure isn't quite finished, then we don't want to cause nitrogen issues, burns, things like that. And again, we don't want those microbes at the surface. We want them down below. So that's kind of we've answered that to some extent, but what you're doing, Kathy, is called top dressing. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. How would you go about amending sandy loam soil?
Organic matter. That's an easy one.
Okay.
And then if you want to ask me how to fix high clay soil, organic matter. It's the same answer across the board for soil issues. Organic matter, we're talking, and it's free to us. It falls off of our trees every fall. It comes off of our lawns. You know, anything that you're picking up with the lawnmower is organic matter, especially in the fall. Take that, dump it on the garden beds, work them in a couple of inches, and let it just start fixing. We need to stop rototilling so much. And here's why. Sandy loam soil, if you're running rototillers through or you're not, but we tend to over rototill and till period. We're destroying the structure of our soil. So, you know, a capillary system in soil, or the veins where the water and air travel, that can take up to 3 years, 4 years to develop. We can destroy that with one swipe of the rototiller. So I'm asking people, if you're having any kind of soil issues, first and foremost, no rototilling. Secondly, organic matter in the form of compost, in the form of leaf mold, in, you know, those kinds of things, and just work it in. And if you're diligent, within 3 seasons or 4 seasons, you are going to see amazing changes. It all comes down to organic matter, always.
When we're going on to a bug issue here, what's the best way to get rid of bugs, like a cabbage bugs on, I'm very bad with pronunciation, delphiniums?
So the
DEL.
cabbage butterfly, yeah, it's probably delphinium. The cat, that doesn't matter. They'll eat it all, right? These guys. Anything in the brassica family in your vegetable gardens. So what happens is these butterflies come down, they lay their eggs on a food source. The instant, as soon as the larvae hatch, ta-da, supper's ready. And they can devastate our cabbage plants, as an example. In 2 days, you've gone from beautiful, healthy plants to nothing. One thing we are testing and trialing right now in my test gardens are decoys. So the cabbage butterfly in particular is territorial. So if you have the decoys fluttering around, and again, I can send these out. We print these things off. They look just like a female cabbage butterfly. We laminate them, cut them out, hang them on fishing line on little pegs, and they float around in the wind. That signals the females that are looking for a place to lay eggs. Oh, there's already a female in the area, and maybe they go to the neighbor's house. That's the premise. We're still in early days of trials, but some feedback I was getting from clients last year is, holy crow, this actually works. So, but I'm not going to leave your crops to chance. You can powder for them, the larvae, if you don't mind getting out of organic. But if you want to stay organic in your gardens, you're going to, in your vegetable gardens anyways, you're going to have to tent. And hopefully they don't find a way in under your domes. I just got mine off Amazon. It's a plastic mesh, and we cover everything. You can make chicken wire cages, whatever you want to do. But on your perennial plants, yeah, dusting's about the only way.
Okay. There's
it's not the prettiest look.
Yeah. There is one of our listeners here is having a white thin layer on the backyard soil. Could you hazard a guess at what seems to be the problem there? And if so, how would they go about treating it?
That sounds like it could be a salt issue, a saline salt issue in the soil.
Yeah.
Just like our houseplants, we get that white layer on the top of the soils, and our soils naturally have salt in them, but without seeing it, if it's not, I'd have to actually visibly see it. If it doesn't look like it's alive, like a white mold, then I would lean to it being salt. Okay. And that can come from a lot of different places. If we're using it on our sidewalks in the winter for ice, things like that. but it can also naturally occur in soil as well.
So if it is a salt layer, what do they go, how do they go about dealing with this?
Well, if things are still growing, then we just amend with organic matter and just keep up with that. If things are starting to suffer, then I would suggest a soil test. In case it's something that has been brought in through, damaged soil in some way, maybe a herbicide contamination or something of that nature. But yeah, if things are thriving, then we just continue as is with amending with organic matter. Otherwise, I don't recommend soil testing very often, but this might be one of those times. I can come out and have a look at it before you spend the money on that, but
Okay.
that's a place to start. Anyway.
Okay, so if they have to go to the route of soil testing, how do they go about that?
You just go on Google, search Saskatchewan soil testing laboratories. You'll get a list. There's quite a few. Now, when it comes to soil testing, though, people are always, we get fixated on nitrogen. Everybody wants to know how much nitrogen do I have in my soil. And that's the one thing that a soil test can't tell you, because nitrogen degrades so quickly in soil that by the time you take it out of your yard, put it in the freezer, get it to the lab and they test it, the nitrogen has dissipated anyway. But it can tell you other things. And maybe salt is one of those things, but you'd have to speak to the lab individually.
Do you have some recommendations, say, for a front door pot under a covered roof, and the pots get virtually no sun or no sun at all, and it's very, very windy?
Go to the dollar store and buy plastic plants. You didn't think you'd hear that from me. Yeah, that's the wrong answer. High wind and no sun. Well, not much grows in zero sun besides mushrooms. But you could start with, Costco sells packages of 6 packs of hostas. You could put a fern in there. You could try, well, how about when I send anyone that's interested, I'll send out lists of annuals for full dry sun, full shade, wind. I'll put together some lists for you. How's that sound instead of?
Okay, and then we could post them on our Facebook.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, that would be absolutely marvelous. For the past few years, one of our listeners is, and along not only them, but their neighbor as well, are having very poor beets. They're going to try by putting in some alfalfa pellets. Is this a good or a bad idea?
Well, if you have alfalfa pellet, if you have rabbits in your area, don't put alfalfa pellets down in the ground, in the soil, because you will attract every pest mammal out there. But this year, pay particular attention to if you have something called leaf miners in the beet leaf itself. And it's a fly comes down, lands on your beet leaf, inserts her tail, lays an egg between the 2 layers of the outside leaf, which is absolutely amazing to me. And then when that little larvae hatches, he just mines through the leaf, destroying the phloem and the cell system of that leaf itself. Now, if they're extensive enough, this can be detrimental to beets, period, in growing. Change the location of where you're planting would be my second bit of advice. Rotate your crops every year on a minimum 3-year cycle. So those beets are never in the same spot for 3 years in a row. They're always getting moved around. That could be helpful. There could be something, there could be root maggots, there could be, something's got your number. And in the fall, they come down and lay their eggs around these crops in hopes that crop will return next year. So if we never rotate, this can be a problem, right? short of not being able to just see the beet itself, if they're just stunted, try changing up varieties. You know, we just have to kind of work it backwards like investigators as to, is it enough sun? Maybe the neighbor's tree grew an extra foot last year and now it's causing just enough shade in your veggie garden to cause a problem. Just to throw it out there, I haven't had great beets in the last few years either, and I'm chalking it up to temperatures, night temperatures especially, could be it as well. It's, you know, when one year we have the fantastic tomatoes and the next year not so great, but you did everything exactly the same, it comes down to temperatures and precipitation and humidity and all these things. So don't give up yet.
Doreen is mentioning here, she's saying, why can I not grow radishes the way I used to on the farm? And I actually have one thing to add to that. My radishes that I grew last year, they came up really nice. They looked really good. And just before we were ready to start utilizing, they all got full of black stuff, black spots. So what's happening to radishes here?
Yeah, there's, you know, don't laugh, but master gardeners are supposed to be able to grow everything, and I can't grow radishes in my yard. My mother-in-law grew fantastic radishes on the farm, can't grow them in town. Why is that? And it's coming down to, I think our soil is a little bit too good for radish. They like a poorer soil. But another thing is, you want to be mindful of a few things. You want to be mindful that you're thinning properly. So when it comes down to the thinning process, these new hybrids are a little bit more, you know, they're showing us different growth characteristics than the old heirlooms we grew up with. Make sure you snip, don't pull your thins, okay? Because we're damaging the root systems underneath of the plants every time we pull. So we want to take a fine pair of pruning snips and snip your thins out. That goes for carrots, that goes for radish. Anything you're thinning, any row you're thinning, always snip, don't pull. But you know, I'm starting to neglect a little patch in the garden as far as amendments, just to see if I can grow better radish in those spots, because I think it's coming down to my soil is just a little bit too optimal. And the radish, there's a few crops out there that don't like great soil. They want, for the bulb to form properly, they want that push. They want that to push through the soil. They don't want it all fluffy and wonderful. This happens all the time in raised beds as well. People can't grow radish. And I think it comes down to those factors.
So it's tough.
As far as the black spot,
yeah.
As far as, yeah, your black spot, Doreen,
yeah.
you got a fungus of some kind on there that took you down.
Yeah, so what you're saying, it's tough love for the radishes.
You know, that seems to be the case.
Okay.
Tough love. Yeah, that's right.
So we have
that goes for your sweet peas and your morning glory as well. Tough love.
Tough love. Okay, so nice. One of the viewers has said they have a weeping caragana in their previous house. They had successfully grown it. Now they're in a condo, and in the backyard is full sun and without any wind protection, as the fences are just railings that are back onto walking paths. They tried the weeping caragana twice here, and it just never can get started. They do a lot of watering it, but do you have any advice for them? Maybe it's too hot and windy back there.
That's a tough one. You know, back when I worked in the greenhouses, the rule of thumb was, if you plant a tree twice and it dies twice, don't ever plant that same tree there again, obviously. It's something, you know, I'd have to come out and look at the soil if you're in Regina, but if, you know, sometimes too, weeping caraganas, the top graft will die before we get these things established. Now, plenty of people had weeping caraganas, and I'm one of them. I've been out to umpteen houses where the grafts failed last year and they didn't bud out because of the drought and the late frost that we had. And we just dug mine out this year on Sunday. So, weeping Karagannas, there's a lot going on. When you're purchasing these things, make sure the top graft looks healthy and there's no canker or anything around that area. But again, if you've tried twice, don't try a third time. Move on to a different plant. Yeah, for sure.
Some of the listeners today, they don't have necessary access to Facebook. But they're just to let everybody mind at ease. You don't need a Facebook to get the information that Sheila's going to send to us. Just send a note to sk@carp, CARP.ca, and we'll send it. We'll send whatever Sheila sends, we'll just send it directly to your email. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'll put my email on the chat right now as well.
Okay.
This is you can go through my website, Mannequin Gardening Solutions, or you can just email me directly. Bypass the website. You can send me pictures. You can,
Good. So it's there.
Drop me in.
Bonneteau at sastel.net. BONNETEAU at sastel.net. Okay. Now, there's some other people that, if we have a few more minutes, asking if you could explain just a bit more about snipping instead of pulling and everything, what that difference is.
So when we pull when we're thinning a row, carrots, radish, great examples. If we don't thin, the bulbs won't form properly, or the taproot of a carrot won't form properly. So the growers, in order to help you, let's use carrots as an example. There might be what the seed houses have started to do, because carrot seed is such a tiny, fine seed, that they've started clumping seed together in a little ball. So it might look like one seed you're planting, but there could be 10 seeds in that cluster. They do this to help us because the seeds are so tiny. Now, so let's say all 5 seeds came up out of that cluster. Now we have a problem, because the roots are never going to form properly. That carrot will never form properly under the soil. It's too crowded. So what we do is we have to thin. Now we go in and thin, every second or third, or however you decide to do it, whatever it is you're growing. But when we pull versus snipping, all the little fine baby root hairs and roots coming off these brand new plants are all intertwined under the soil. And when we rip and pull, we're taking healthy root with it. We're damaging the system under the soil. So the masters always, and we never pull, we only snip. And you can get yourself a really good pair of snipping or pruning shears on Amazon for $9. The dollar store often brings them in, and they're super, super sharp and pointy. So be mindful, don't cut yourself. But you can use those to go in and snip versus yanking. Because every time we yank a seedling out, we're taking its neighbor's root systems with it, or potentially damaging the neighbor's root systems. And some years are worse than others. And you've done it one way for 30 years and never had an issue. But what people forget is, when we do these techniques properly, our yields go up. You may be satisfied with the yields you've always had, but how about we see how big we can actually go, how we can improve. And that's what, moving from that reactive to proactive gardening is all about.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're nearing the end of our session here, but I cannot tell you how glad we were having you here, Sheila, to join us today with Coffee with C.A.R.P. And it's been absolutely marvelous. And we have really appreciated your insight on gardening here. And just as a reminder, it's Sheila's email is BONNETEAU@sastel.net. And if you have any questions, and it's mannequingardeningsolutions.com, but is her website. One of the things, though, if you you're
Right.
not sure exactly what it is, just send us an email at sk@carp, CARP.ca, and we'll respond immediately. Put in attention with Coffee with Carp, and we'll make sure that your answers, or make sure that your questions get answered or information gets sent to you. So again, Sheila, please, we're very thankful that you could join us. And if going onward for Coffee with Carp, I don't know if you have any ideas on topics that you would find interesting to know more about, or welcome a chance to even chat over coffee here with us, please forward them to sk@carp.ca. Attention, Coffee with Carp. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about CARP and getting involved, send us an email to the same address. I'll get to you in a minute, Noreen and Darlene. You both have questions. So please feel free to let others know about this new programming that we have, Coffee with CARP. And our next session, I'll just mention it here, is on May 25th at 10 a.m. And it will be entitled Modern Media, Staying Connected with Family and Friends, and we'll be sharing our own and your experiences over the last year. What's been good, what remains challenging, and what does the future bring in regards to the utilization of modern media? Noreen, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. This is more for Kathleen, I guess, just on the organizational level. How does CARP connect or interact with Sask Seniors mechanism? Or is there
We are a member of the Saskatchewan Seniors Mechanism. So we support their initiatives and they support ours.
okay?
Yeah, we have had members sit on the board in the past, and we're very much there as a partner with them on any issues or concerns that will affect seniors. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of wondering if we had a seat, if CARP has a seat on Sask Senior Mechanism or vice versa, so that, you know, the two are working together, because I know they're very active in the advocacy for seniors housing, for example. That's one of their, you know, and you sound like you have some similar objectives, but no, it's good to know. We can't have too many, I think.
Right. Well, and we all support each other. Each organization may have its own focus, but that's not to say that we don't support other initiatives with other organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Wendy, also you have something to say?
Yes, just a quick point to add to what Kathleen has just spoken to about SSM. We're currently sitting on their Research and Issues Committee as well, dealing with various advocacy and positive aging. As Kathleen has mentioned, we're working together, and that's cooperation and working together, we find gets ourselves moving forward.
Okay, good. Thank you, Wendy. Sheila, again, maybe we can invite you back for the fall sometime to help us a little bit with learning what we should be doing in the fall, because we'd love to have you.
That is, you know, that's a great topic, and that's when we put most our efforts into the yards, is actually in the fall, so that the spring is optimal. So
maybe
by all means, I would love to join you again.
Okay, well, we would love to have you. So again, thank you for all the participants. Until we chat again, I will leave you with a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright. "The longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes." So keep smiling, and make sure this has been recorded, so we will have it on our website. Keep smiling and stay safe, everybody. Goodbye for now.
Nice meeting all of you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great session.